And now we're going to swing over to Jason Unruhe out of Canada to join us for more on this discussion. Jason, you heard the U.S. president boasting and bragging about all of his policies and how successful he's been. Your thoughts?
Well, this is no surprise. We knew that Donald Trump was going to run for the leadership again. We knew he was going to run again. There was no doubt in anyone's mind this was going to happen. So this is not a surprise. But looking at his rhetoric is very telling. He claims to have drained the swamp. Well, maybe he drained the swamp, but he got his entire administration scraped off the bottom of what's left over. I mean, this president, and sure, he is one of the most embattled. I would not say the most embattled. I think President Clinton was probably embattled much more than he was. There was actual impeachment proceedings taking place. So, he has had a difficult time in terms of dealing with the false allegations of Russian collusion, which certainly many people do agree, and I would be one of them, was something that the other section of the ruling elite wanted to use as a measure to get rid of him. But politically, he has been proven to be much more difficult than this. But it's interesting listening to his rhetoric talking about how he has changed things. So mostly what he has changed is the discourse and lowered political discourse in the United States down to levels that, even my grandparents have never seen in the history of the United States. The nastiness, the brutality, the personal attacks, things of which are unbecoming of someone who holds the highest office in their land, regardless of what that land is. And we have seen nothing but in the past 6 months to a year, the constant drive by the president to try to make up for many of the things that he said he was going to do. But frankly, though, the political capital is not there to accomplish. There's been a massive resurgence of ICE agents going against migrants. He's recently announced that he's going to have several million so-called illegals kicked out of the country for merely only the purpose of supporting his own numbers, which have been drastically dwindling. Now, we saw the previous report out of the U.S. media that when the poll numbers came in and his were very low, rather than trying to understand why he was so low, he fired his polling team. In other words, he acted in a rash manner, an emotional reaction to something he doesn't like. This is not the mentality of the kind of person who should be running a country. Someone who makes such emotional knee-jerk reactions is very dangerous to have in an office, or any office, let alone one that powerful.
And Jason, I'm glad you're touching upon his domestic issues and some of his domestic policies, because he's boasting and bragging there at the lectern about how he's created so many jobs, he's done so many great things for even his support base, a lot of Midwest farmers. And guess what? A lot of his trade wars, one with China, even the ones trying to rewrite NAFTA with Mexico and Canada, all the aluminum steel tariffs with the European Union, with India. Guess what? They've hurt the American consumer. They've hurt American industry, and to the point where he's out there bailing. You remember the bailout from the banks back in '09? He's bailing out farmers. They're handing out $18 billion to Midwest and Southern farmers because they're taking because of his trade tensions. And guess what? He just said that deals were made in Washington back rooms before I came around. We ended it and put a stop to it. Guess what? He circumvented Congress on all those trade wars that he's ignited with just 2 or 3 advisors around him. He also is, dishing out behind Congress's back sensitive nuclear technology to the Saudis. But he's talking about how he's the most transparent president in modern U.S. history. Jason, you there?
Yes, I'm here. It's very obvious that Trump is not transparent in any way, shape, or form. He has completely acted on his own, without consensus, without consulting the American people, without consulting Congress, etc. His entire platform on trade, not the one he promised, but the one he delivered, has been absolutely disastrous. What he has claimed would happen did not happen. He managed to abolish the NAFTA agreement and then sign one with Canada that was only slightly different than the one that existed, which means all the money that was spent on this, the experts coming in, the lawyers to rewrite the laws, the lost goodwill between countries, all of it for essentially nothing. This was just thrown away. The constant battle with Huawei has actually increased their profits when it was intended to hurt them. The situation that the American farmers are facing right now do require bailouts. And I think the main reason for this is Trump has not understood that he is not a businessman in this position. He is a politician. He is a statesman. It is his job to work out agreements between countries. This is not like his, billion-dollar empire where he can simply dictate to small producers or small contractors whatever he wants, do whatever he wants, rip off whoever he wants. He's constantly getting sued. That is not how countries work. Maybe that's how a very shady business works. Maybe that's how he does business. But this is a country. This is a political entity, not something that is merely an economic entity as you would get with a private business. And that is what he has not understood. There are consequences for actions when they take place out there in the political world that don't exist in the economic world when you're dealing with businesses.
Jason, we only have about 2.5 minutes left. Really quick, his successes and failures with respect to his foreign policy.
His foreign policy has been nothing more than an absolute catastrophe. He promised to end the wars. He absolutely failed to do so in every way, shape, or form. He called the so-called deep state was responsible for these things, while failing to understand that this is how imperialism is. Once a country develops to a particular level, as the United States done, it has done so off the backs of the hundreds of millions of poor across the world, and has failed to understand. They continued the hostilities with Syria, even though he wanted to bring it to an end. And most telling of all was his claim years ago that Obama was going to try to start a war with Iran in order to try to save his presidency or to justify continuing it beyond its legal limit. How ironic that this is exactly what we're seeing out of Trump today. His administration is fabricating attacks upon foreign vessels and then blaming them on Iran with absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and then has Marco Rubio go out of the media, particularly social media on Twitter, and saying if anybody disagrees with the mainstream intelligence establishment of the United States, they're somehow unpatriotic. More of this, it's you're either with us or against us, we can do no wrong kind of mentality. This has been the dead opposite of what he promised from his from when he ran for presidency.
Jason, thanks for joining us. That's a wrap for the program of yours. That was Jason.